Hello, welcome back to the series entitled Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today we will be looking at one of the basic tenets of the law of karma, which is how to interpret the law of karma. And I warmly invite to our studio Sister Denise, welcome.
Thank you.
Who is a senior teacher at the Brahma Kumari's World Spiritual University, and she's taking us into the subject that's known and yet not properly understood. Welcome, Sister Denise. Tell me, as a point of departure, how would you define the law of karma?
In the simplest way, you would say, as you sow, so shall you reap, which is the biblical expression of it. They use a term, what goes around comes around. So karma means that whatever you do, thought, word, deed, there's an equal and opposite return that takes place. And it has short-term, mid-term and long-term consequence. The karma that you do could be pure, could be impure, could be there's very few kinds of karma that are completely neutral. That's a special category. There are necessary karmas, many different categories like this, but there's a spectrum between everywhere from really good to really bad. And there's a price you pay for the really bad and a reward that you receive for the really good. So this is basically what the law of karma is about.
How do you interpret this law in the context of your daily life?
You know, we are looking at karma, destiny, sanskaras, choice, attitude, premonition. You know, there's many different energies that are going on. And the law of karma is a sort of underlying force that functions and that makes the world the way it is. It's a force that causes everything to get equalized. Sometimes you find in a historical record, it will say, you know, such and such a section of the world did such and such an activity and they took advantage of such and such another section of the world. They will have to repay. Whether it's a collective activity, whether it's in representing your government, whether it's an individual, whether it's a matter of family or clan or honor or something like this. So it can be quite complicated, but karma always equalizes it. One problem is that you do something, say, negative to someone, so then you pay, and you don't like how you pay, so you have a further negative reaction to it, and then that has to be equalized. And so there's this seesawing going on, which can become very destabilizing. And in the present world, there are many people who have come to the conclusion that you can no longer sort of look towards pointing the finger at who's to blame, because it's become so complex that it's really not about trying to find who's to blame. Even in terms of applying justice where antisocial activity has taken place, you may find yourself in the middle of karmic repercussions, and you have to do what you have to do, but at the same time the law of karma is operating. Sometimes the wrong person gets imprisoned and they need to be imprisoned, but not for that crime, for some other crime, you know. Or sometimes someone gets away with something, but eventually not. It has a long reach, the law of karma, a long hand. There's a statue in Singapore of this. It shows a person standing on top of a very high plinth and pointing, and this hand is very, very long, and it goes all the way around in a huge circle and comes back and touches him on the back. And I found that a very good image of how the law of karma really works.
Karma is something that is unfolding in everyone's life at every given moment, is it not?
The consequences of what you've done are appearing, and you're also planting seeds, good seeds or bad seeds. Even your interpretation of the consequences is another kind of seed. And the problem with the law of karma is very, very complicated. And because there's so many people in the world, history is so long, and it's practically impossible to unravel.
Practically impossible, you say. Okay, yet you and I are embarking on this exercise to do just that.
Yeah.
There are many watching you right now, millions across the globe actually, who have faced negative karma in their lives and who've experienced all types of pain, yet do not understand how the law of karma worked in bringing them that pain. So how does one get to the lesson? The reason I'm asking this is when someone experiences any type of pain in life, it's experienced as punishment. Sometimes severe, sometimes extremely severe, sometimes just a slap on the wrist. What do you do when you are on the receiving end of a strike from life?
I think it depends on your upbringing. If you are brought up with the idea of the law of karma as a big section of the world is, when you're brought up with that idea, it inclines you towards accepting. Acceptance doesn't come easy if you grow up raised in the idea that if something bad is happening to you, it's punishment. And it's God who is responsible for this, which means that your relationship with God is compromised by that idea. From my angle, God knows the laws of karma and is very happy to describe them to you. But one of the things that is clear about the laws of karma is nobody has to administer them. They happen automatically. And this is what people don't understand. I think if something bad is happening, someone is making it happen. And people who understand about karma, they need to know, if they don't already know, that if something negative is happening, it is a process. It's a law that is nothing to do with a decision of a human being. It's a natural law. And people are used to the laws of science, laws of physics. But karma is not a physical law entirely, it's a spiritual law. Of course it has its effect in the physical world. We are living in the physical world. You experience the consequences of karma physically on your body, in your relationships, in your circumstances, and so on. This is why you need strength, because you have to endure. Because if you can't endure it, you react, and your reaction is to intensify the debt, which means your payment will be higher. And the meaning of knowing about the laws of karma is that you will make sure that you pay the minimum. When you don't know, you kind of make sure that you pay the maximum with interest, you know, and then some. And so God would say, why would you do that to yourself? You know, it's completely unnecessary. Be reasonable and settle for the minimum payment.
Is one of the reasons that it's so difficult to understand the implementation of the law of karma is that the consequences is quite some distance away from the actions.
Very often. Sometimes it's right away, You know, you eat a green apple, you get a bad stomach same day. But a lot of the time, it's from another lifetime. People who are raised with the idea of karma are also raised with the idea of reincarnation. And when you are raised in a culture that does not subscribe to the idea of reincarnation, then you can't possibly understand karma. And therefore, your explanation is, it was the will of God to have this or that done to you, and don't ask any questions.
So what you are saying is, whenever a human soul experiences sorrow, at some point in that soul's past, they created the karmic account that caused the sorrow.
Well, there is an increasing amount of, I'm not going to use the word sorrow because it's subjective. I'm going to use the word harm. I mean, the amount of harm that's getting done is increasing. Sometimes someone experiences the consequences of having harmed someone. They get harmed. But then their reaction will be to harm again or to harm more, because they don't see that they're paying something. They see that they need to take revenge. So it's an escalating thing. And this is why the amount of human suffering is increasing in the world quite exponentially. So I think if people can understand and have enough intuition to be able to recognize that the pain that you're going through is a suffering that you merit because you have inflicted some harm on someone and now it's coming back to you, and that will equalize it. But if you react against it or you want more justice, then it's not equalized anymore. You have set off another bondage of karma.
You spoke earlier about paying the minimum amount. What does that mean?
Okay, you did something. Everybody does something. Okay, fair enough. You did something in some other life. Okay, fair enough. Something comes to you. You will have a feeling. Either this is a test, or this is a settlement of karma. If it's a test, then it has to be a test of something. So you have to discern, what is it a test about? Do I have some weakness that this particular circumstance is going to help me to face and get over? In which case, it's not a punishment from karma, it's a test. And you have to take it as a test if it's a test. Now, if it's really a punishment from karma, inside you, you will have this thought, what did I do to deserve this? It means you're trying to calculate that you must have done something, otherwise this wouldn't happen. And it usually means that it is. And you did something, but you don't remember.
I've had this conversation with many people about having to settle their various karmic debts. And many find it too painful to accept that they could have created such an account as to warrant such punishment. Why do bad things happen to good people?
You can say everybody's good, right? But good people do bad things.
Ow, that's painful. How can you help somebody who cannot fathom what they did to deserve this?
Oh, I think you have to just put them in front of themselves until they see it. But depending on circumstances, you know, you have to see yourself in difficult circumstances and see what you do, because there are all kinds of good people who do bad things in certain circumstances.
When I was younger, I was an avid fan of Khalil Gibran. And I remember this line from the Prophet that goes, much of your pain is self-chosen. It's the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
Do you believe, Sister Denise, that we choose our pain?
Nothing comes to you that you can't handle. That's one spiritual law. And you may not like it, but it comes to you for a reason. And You can avoid it, and then it'll come on more strong. And I think that the examples you were talking about a little bit earlier is to do with people who've been avoiding and avoiding and avoiding, and then the pain has to come stronger and stronger in order to get the message through.
You often hear people come up with idioms to try and answer life's questions, like, this happened to this person on this day because it was a question of wrong place, wrong time. Is there such a thing?
I would think in the scheme of things it may feel like wrong place, wrong time, but it would be right place, right time. But not necessarily pleasant.
No. So in terms of your understanding, what you are saying is, even though something looks like an accident, it's not.
No. And there are no coincidences.
So there's no coincidences, there's no accidents, and there's no pain without a reason.
Right. But you have to discern the reason, you know. It may not be punishment. It may be something that wants you to rise to a much higher level, because we talked earlier about destiny. You're destined to function up here. What are you doing down here? We'll just do something to...
How does one keep heart in all of this? It's difficult to deal with any form of loss or suffering. It's difficult to deal with a negative consequence of an action that you have no recollection of having performed. So when punishment comes via the karmic wheel, it comes unannounced in your face. How do you deal with that?
The purpose of doing spiritual practice, the purpose of meditation, the purpose of studying is to acquire the wisdom and the power to handle this, because the times we're living through are, I think I mentioned it earlier, pretty much the times of reckoning, which is all these karmic accounts are up for settlement. And times of great change also mean that old accounts must be settled before we can move into anything new. And there are many who feel, yeah, something new is really coming, something old is trying not to go, but it's going. And in difficult times, we need to understand these things, because it's going to enable us to get through it and thrive.
What does one do on a daily basis to manage one's karmic debts?
What we need is the wealth of spiritual light. And what we have to do for that is meditation, because in meditation you draw light, you draw energy into yourself. And this energy takes the form of a material, a substance that can be applied to settlement of karma. In Brahma Kumaris we call this settlement of karma by yoga power. But you have to acquire a large amount of yoga power in order to actually settle these debts. Potentially you have a huge possibility for accumulation of spiritual power, but practically everyone is running on empty. So the more you can give yourself time to meditate and fill yourself with power and study these things, the better equipped you are to handle it.
From what I gather, you've been explaining that it's not possible to avoid a karmic account, is it? Okay. So when it comes to karma, you literally cannot run or hide.
There's nowhere to go. Your karma, you can say, is inside you. You can't run away from yourself.
So it just draws you like a magnet.
Yeah.
If you experienced harm through the hand of someone else, does it necessarily mean that you harmed that person in the past?
It's likely you must have done something, unless that wasn't a karmic account settlement, it was a test. If it was a test, then that's something else.
What do you mean by test? A test of what?
Test of your resilience, a test of your power to endure, a test of your power to maintain your independence and freedom in the face of violence or whatever. These tests are necessary to carry someone, not everyone, someone who has to go to a higher level. They'll force that person to go to that higher level. Like, you can't avoid paying the price. If you're destined to do something very significant, you can't avoid that either.
The world is full of examples of people who've experienced deep sorrow, and that sorrow has totally destroyed them. How do you go through something that bad and still come out on the other side with your dignity? How do you do that?
Here, I think you want to bring in the matter of the divine or God. This backwards and forwards of negative karma is one level. You don't have to play on that level. You can go to a higher level and say, okay, let me, be with the divine, draw power, qualities from the divine, and be detached and dispassionate from this thing down here, because it's only a game. It depends on the perspective you're looking at. When you go high, God is known to be high, high up. You go there and you look at it, it looks small. And you tell yourself, it's only a game, it's not the end of the world. Myself is an eternal being. These are storms in teacups. You give it a different angle of vision. You don't have to be destroyed by something. If you take it as enormous, you could just as easily take it as a storm in a teacup. And it's just up to you to realize that you had that capacity. And then you make big things small, small things you can make big, because it's relative, you see. Everything is relative, and it's relative to how you position yourself vis-a-vis God, yourself, and the performance.
It's quite obvious that there's nothing superficial about the law of karma. Does that mean you have to be a person of depth to even understand it?
Well, it is deep, it is complicated, complex. It is the theme of the Bhagavad Gita is all about karma, and this difference between the laws of karma and human law, moral laws, the religious laws, all of these things are actually in conflict with each other, and unraveling this conflict is an interesting exercise, which is philosophical. And then a question you were asking earlier, how you implement that in daily life, and it has to be connected with your willingness to look at life from an angle or a perspective that's different from all the people around you. And they may not like that, but you can get a lot of freedom from doing that.
I have reached the end of this episode with you, but I have more questions than answers. So what I'm going to do is keep the rest of the questions that I have for another episode, because I think we've just skimmed the surface of this very deep subject. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you at home for spending this half an hour with us. What we've done today is just seen the tip of the iceberg as far as the law of karma is concerned. This is a very vast subject, and I warmly invite you to sit with us for the forthcoming episodes to understand what the law of karma is and how to implement it and understand your life. And the end effect, I think, is the point of making your life better. And we thank Sister Denise for sharing her wisdom to bring us to that point. Thank you, and take care. Goodbye.